Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adventures in History. Hope everybody is having a wonderful night. It has been a really good day here in the old Shane world. Welcome, Finesse and Foggage. Hope you're having a good one. Hey, Cave, how's it going? Good to see you. Hope all of you are having a wonderful evening. Hey, Joey, good to see you. Welcome. Yeah, it's been a pretty good day. There's the Steve. What up, Steve? I spent actually a fairly decent portion of the day hanging out in Steve's chat and helping him working on world building stuff, which is one of the things that I really like to do. So, had a really good time working on that and coming up with like the difference between orcs and gnolls and who these people are allegorically and who we're copying for this and when this is all happening and the relative economic status of semi-nomadic tribal ogres as they move their their herds of Saiga antelope across the the steppe. Hey, Martes, good to see you. So it's been an interesting, fun day. I've had a good time doing that. I do not frequently get to exercise those muscles, especially lately because I've been doing so much work on the sociology project. Yesterday morning, I actually submitted my first draft of the big honkin' paper that I've been working on, so that has taken a little bit of the pressure off. Hopefully I am really sure you'll give me more opportunities to do that. And Steve, seriously, anytime, man. I for real love that stuff. I appreciate being able to do the creative stuff without having to then follow through with the actually writing it all down stuff. Like, were I doing brainstorming and world building for my own world, it would not be nearly as fun all of the time, because then I have to go actually do all of the writing, right? You know, like I have to go sit down at the keyboard and spend all of the time typing all of the stuff out. So yeah, it's nice. It's sort of like playing with my sister's kids, you know? Like I get to enjoy the kids and, get to be Uncle Shane, and I get to read them the books and play with the toys. And then when they have a poopy diaper, I just give them back to my sister. So it's like fostering ideas, I guess. All of the benefit of the emotional tie-ins and the creative juices flowing, and none of the responsibility of nurturing those things into life. But yeah, I have a really good time doing that, and I do enjoy writing. I enjoy my own writing quite a bit. I say that mostly in jest. I do quite enjoy doing my own writing, and I probably should get back to that. The problem is that I've just been spending way too much time doing non-fun writing. Scholarly writing is a different animal altogether. How was the stream we raided into last time? You only stuck around for a bit. It was an interesting stream. The two gentlemen that were speaking did seem to have quite a bit of exposure to quite a bit of different ideas, and were speaking with some credibility. I don't know if I necessarily agreed with a lot of their interpretations on history, but that's that's sort of we can agree to disagree kind of thing, right? Good morning from the realm of chaos. You hope everyone's morning has been better than yours. I've actually had a really good day, Figment, so sorry yours has been stinky. It was an interesting channel. I wouldn't have a problem raiding over there again. I think that there is good discourse that was going on, so I have nothing negative to say about it. So there's that. So the show is Adventures in History, and we talk about stuff in a really laid-back manner with lots of fun side treks and rabbit chases and pop cultural references and dad jokes and puns and all of that low-level version of humor that only the rabble appreciate. By the way, I might have lots of fancy pieces of paper, but I by no means consider myself some sort of educated elite. You struggled in the stream, you don't think that your brain is built that way? And that's okay. Yeah, that's like I said, it's not going to be a channel that everybody gets super excited about. But, my channel is not something that everybody's going to get super excited about. Not everybody wants to come and just chat about old stuff. And I'm okay with that. Everybody has their own little world. Everybody has their own things that give them the warm and fuzzies. So they should, though. I mean, if more of the people wanted to, and this could actually, fund a job where I could create some sort of momentum to just do streaming teaching and not actually have to do regular teaching, that would be honking amazing. And I would love that. However, I am under no level of suspicion that it's going to be something coming down the pipe. I do this because it's fun. And if people want to subscribe, that's cool. And if people want to hang around, that's cool too. You also tend to panic over debate and strong opposing opinions where things can devolve into arguments. Their channel seemed like it could maybe turn into that, and you freeze up in those conditions. Figment, you need to just hang around me more, because I'll just make you argue about stuff. I'm really good at that. I'll stand in the middle of an argument and make both sides mad. No, you won't. Yes, I will. You can't make me. Use that reverse psychology thing where it's like, Steve, I refuse to allow you to drag me into an argument. Think how long you tried to get me to make a "that's what she said" joke, and how long it took me a while, but didn't it happen? I mean, didn't we eventually get there? Argument is not the same as contradiction. There was a pregnant pause where I knew you were thinking "that's what she said," and you sort of gave the visual, like, I'm about to say it, but you didn't say it. So I'm counting that as a win. Nothing makes you want to get into a fist fight more than people saying, I refuse to argue with you about this. Oh, dang, you will. If I want to friggin' argue about this, you're going to friggin' argue about this. So I actually... you said, but that's not what she wanted. I'm going to count it because it's in the same spirit. So I personally don't like arguing that much. Arguing implies that there is an oppositional sort of element to the conversation. I would love to discuss things with people where we can both understand that at the end of this discussion, we can both still be friends and still have our own opinions, yet simultaneously allow the other person enough respect to hear them out on their points of view. You don't ever have to, and this is another thing, and this is sort of a hot take, and I know that I'm sort of spinning off here, not actually talking about the material, but here's a hot take for you. Everyone is not entitled to their own opinion. And you go, but wait, everyone is entitled to their own informed opinion. You can't just come at me with some garbage. You are not entitled to argue with me with something that is just completely garbage. Like, you don't have any basis for your argument. You're not entitled to be an idiot like that. You can go do some research and have some valid opinions that are different than mine, that's fine. But if you're going to come at me with, well, you're wrong, and I go, why? Because I don't like that. I don't care if you like it. If it's the way that it is, it's the way that it is. And we don't have to be mean about it. I'm not trying to be like all antagonistic here. Countercultural opinions from a history teacher? Heresy! You're contractually obligated to push the government's whitewash mainstream propaganda. Oh, I get in trouble for that so much. I get in trouble for that so much. The job that I had where I taught high school, I got in trouble all the time. I sat in the principal's office probably more than students got sent out of my classroom to the principal's office. How dare you expect me to be informed, to back up my opinion with facts? I know, it's crazy. You can't just go like, I think the sky is purple. Well, okay, congratulations. Maybe you live near the equator or something and you have some sort of weird astrological phenomenon going on, but most of the time it's not purple. You in trouble? And I was in Alabama at that point. Yeah, and let's just remember, I am what I would like to consider an open-minded individual living in a region that is stereotypically very closed-minded. Not everyone here is that way, by the way. Not everybody in Mississippi or Alabama is a closed-minded bigot. There are many people that I am near and dear friends with that have lived here their whole lives or are living here now that are great people, open-minded people, people that are respectful of others. These stereotypes exist because of a reason, but it's not like 100% of people here are backwards, hateful, redneck racists, right? Some guy tried to tell me you were wrong about the Peloponnesian League once. He was taking a Greek history class. This was right after our master's graduation. That was an interesting discussion. Yeah, there we go. I guess I'm the exception to the rule. So it's not even that I'm the exception to the rule. There are way more people down here that are really good, decent individuals that are forward-thinking, that are open-minded, that possess informed opinions on things. It's not just all clan members. I believe we've had this discussion and you pointed out Indiana's clan membership. Yeah, pretty much. Vocal minorities tend to put up the wrong face in the majority from an outside perspective. Absolutely. And that gets down to, that actually gets back to the informed opinion thing, where people go, oh, well, everybody from Mississippi has to be a redneck and loves Jesus and hates gay people and hates black people. But that is an uninformed opinion. And I exist, and many of my friends exist as direct pieces of information that go against that uninformed opinion. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about our actual topic. So we are in a viewer request episode, which means that this topic is one that came from you all, the viewers, and it is the Manhattan Project. So on Thursday nights, usually what we do is go through history in chronological order. And we are currently covering the 2nd century of the modern era. So if you want to use AD or CE or whatever you want to use, we're in the period of time from about 100 to about 200. So if you want to come back on Thursday night, we'll be talking about the earliest foundational cultures of Japan. But tonight we get to talk about whatever people wanted to talk about. So this was chosen out of a list and then voted on by the group, and it's the Manhattan Project. And I do want to say, sort of, before we dive into this actual information, that there's a lot of moving pieces in this particular discussion. There are dozens of individuals that were involved. There are multiple sites that were involved. There are advances that were made concurrently. So it's actually a little bit difficult to create one sort of through narrative of this entire period of time, even though it's only about 7 or 8 years long. There's a lot of stuff going on here. So I've done my best to try to condense this into something that is accessible. If we don't talk about your favorite nuclear physicist, I apologize. You are welcome, as always, to throw stuff into the chat. This is not a lecture. This is a conversation. I just happen to have put together a group of facts to talk about. So if you want to talk about something, you are welcome to. If you want to ask questions about something, go for it. If you want to take us off on a tangent that is only partially related, that's great. I love that stuff. We're going to show some photos tonight. We're going to look a little bit at the map, and we're going to talk about the Manhattan Project. So this, of course, is the American project to create a nuclear weapon. But it doesn't actually just start with the Manhattan Project. It starts several years earlier, and it actually starts over in Germany. Yeah, so you might have wondered why we have the map over here looking at Europe, because right around here is, at that point, the country of Germany, which was significantly larger than it is today. It's more of a sort of a shoebox rectangle area that sat right about here. Germany was a really big player in the First World War. They had an enormous amount of impact on the world. And of course, then Germany fell apart and they lost a big chunk of the territory out here. They lost territory over here. And by the time we get to the interwar phase, where we're going to pick up tonight, Germany had become much smaller. However, Germany was changing, and it was industrializing very rapidly under the command of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime. And one of the things that the Nazis were very interested in was science, and using science to create new ways to excel. And this was not purely just a military thing, but it did have a military component. The Nazis were very interested in making certain that they had the most dominant military that was available. But they also had a lot of really brilliant scientists. They had a big series of what we would call state colleges or institutions of higher learning that were inside of Germany at the time. And there were some honestly very brilliant people. And our story is actually going to start at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. So Kaiser Wilhelm was the leader of Germany that united Germany prior to World War I back in 1878. The big university was named after him. And this is where, even prior to the World War I and interwar phase that we are in right now, a lot of good German science had been taking place. And there are going to be several nuclear physicists that are going to be doing some work around this time. And one of the big things that they are working on are these new elements that they had discovered. The periodic table as we know it today was not as filled in the 1930s as it is today. A lot of the heavier elements, what we call the rare earth elements, things like uranium and plutonium, Photoshop elements, none of that stuff had really been very well defined at that point. They were still using paint, which is a significantly inferior program, but it's what they had, right? Right. So one of the things that they are doing during this time is looking at how to find these new elements, and then when they find these new elements, what are we going to do with them? What properties do they have? What sorts of applications can we use for these? I was talking about like MS Paint. Also, hey, David, good to see you, man. Yeah, so prior to Photoshop elements, we had paint. Which one is the fifth element? I think Lilu is the fifth element. I'm not certain exactly where Mia Jovovich was born. If I had to guess, I would say somewhere in the Balkans or Eastern Europe. The fifth element is heart. Well, that's definitely the one that made Captain Planet work. The pure of heart. Anxiety is the fifth element.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Moose, thank you so much for that subscription, my friend. 10 whole months. Woohoo! Thanks for hanging around and being such a big supporter of the stream. Multipass? I'm Spartacus. All right, so yeah, we have these German people and they're working over in Germany and they're doing stuff, and there are a few pretty important scientists, and I was able to locate some photos of a couple of these individuals. So let's take a look. So the people that we are currently looking at, I don't care if that film is considered good or bad, you love it. I love it too. There's only one Corbin Dallas, and he's already on this flight. You're a meat popsicle? Nice. Was Von Braun in this camp? Sorta. Ooh, what am I doing here? Wrong button. Let's look at these people and then we'll get back around to that. So the people that we are looking at here are two scientists, a guy named Otto, and I should be typing this down, but I'm not. Otto Hahn, and his assistant here, Dr. Meitner. And you might not hear about her very much because, as we all know, science back in the day was sort of a boys' club. But she's pretty involved. This, by the way, is Lisa Meitner. I didn't say her first name. You'll type for me? Let me go over here, and we'll type these people's names down. Han. That's wrong. I was not able to find a photo of Strassman, but he was involved in this as well. So these three people, Otto Hahn, Fritz Strassman, and Lisa Meitner, are doing some research with this particular element called uranium, which had sort of just recently been refined out to the point where you could use it. There were already several different isotopes of uranium that had been discovered. An isotope, by the way, is, and we're going to have a lot of chemistry and a lot of physics stuff tonight, and it's just sort of part of the deal. But in chemistry, an isotope is any version of the element that has a different atomic number than it would find normally. So, like, you know, if uranium's atomic number or atomic mass is 235, you know, well, that's one thing. But then let's say we find a version of uranium that's atomic mass is 239. You know, it's still uranium, but it's got a little bit of a different measure. Well, that's an isotope. So we have like hydrogen, which shows up sometimes instead of just one proton and one neutron as one proton and two neutrons. So then you have this isotope of hydrogen called deuterium. But anyway, different address for the uranium postman. So they were working with this particular isotope of uranium, and they had figured out a way to sort of shoot it with a neutron. So a neutron is the particle inside of an atom that doesn't have a charge. So you have positive protons and negative electrons. The neutrons are the ones that don't have a charge. So they figured out that if you shoot uranium with neutrons, basically, you know, kind of hitting it the right way, you could actually break this uranium into two elements of barium. So barium is an element that has a lower atomic number. It has a lower number of neutrons and protons and electrons naturally. So basically, you could shoot a neutron at an element of uranium, and if you hit it the right way, it would break apart into two elements or two atoms of barium. And this is a really fascinating kind of thing here. Like, we are effectively creating new elements from one element. What's up with this? This was very, very new. Nobody really even knew exactly what was going on here. Neutron variants, correct. Hey, Avern, good to see you also. Oh my word, Manhattan Project. Hey, Visual Nomad, good to see you, good to see you. Hope everybody's having a good one. Hope you're having a good one too. So, Hahn and Strassman were both German citizens and were doing okay. But here's the problem that came up with Lisa Meitner. She was from Austria, originally, and she had Jewish heritage. So when the Nazis began to pass Nuremberg laws, Meitner actually lost her citizenship. And Hahn and Strassman tried to basically work out a way for her to sort of stay at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. They basically said, look, we will sponsor you, we will cover all of this stuff up, because the stuff that they were doing was really, really high profile and had the attention of a lot of the high members of the German government at that time. So they were like, look, Lisa, we can protect you. Even though you're not really going to be something that is going to fit well here, we'll take care of you. And her response was, I don't trust anybody right now. So she decided to leave. And when she realized that she needed to leave Germany, she started looking around for other people that were in the region that were doing similar research that she thought might be, somebody that they could sort of fit in with. And this is going to lead her to contact this gentleman. This is the physicist Niels Bohr. Niels Bohr was, at the time, living in Copenhagen, so just north of where they were working in Berlin. And he extended an invitation for Meitner to come live and work in Copenhagen. He's like, look, I work at the university, I can get you a job. If nothing else, you can just sort of stay here at my house and, we'll work everything out. So that's where she went. And when she got up to Copenhagen and starts talking, is that near Skull? Yeah, probably the right call. Yeah. You want to run from the Nazis. If you have any sort of Jewish history, and you are a solo woman that's not married, that has Jewish ancestry in Germany in 1938, if you can get out, get out. So if you're watching this back in time, get out. So she's staying with Niels Bohr. He's also a very gifted individual, and they start talking. And over the course of several months, it turns out that some of the other members of Meitner's family are also trying to get out. And one of them, I need to make this smaller. That's not doing it. Let me tinker around with this. Nope. There we go. And that's not working either. So I did the wrong thing. Let me delete that. We're going to delete this. Put the exclamation point back. There we go. Boom. All right. So, if you're anyone other than Hitler who has Jewish ancestry, run. Yeah, pretty much. Exactly. So, one of Meitner's family members is actually her nephew, is a guy named Otto Frisch, and he is this guy. Frisch was also a scientist and was not as big in the nuclear physics world as his aunt. Had done some work with biology and some stuff with other life sciences. But he's going to come up and meet with her and Niels Bohr, and they're all going to sort of start talking about this. It's called the Frisch-Strassman experiment, but Lisa Meitner was right there in the middle of it. And they are really fascinated by this concept of what happens when you split this atom. Like, how does that happen? What are the implications of that? And it's actually Frisch that first suggests using the name fission, because he says, look, well, if you're looking at biology, when you have two cells that are undergoing mitosis and they end up splitting into two ones, or two cells, that, the technical process is mitosis, but you also have these spore cells that can literally just split in half and sort of go off and do their own thing, and we call that fission. So this is nuclear fission. And he's actually the guy that kind of coined the term nuclear fission. And their sort of mental capacity put together really starts explaining exactly the potential application of this stuff. And originally, what they're looking at is the potential to create energy. And the original concepts that they had were based around trying to figure out a way to harness the energy that is released when these atoms split. And they were looking at it as a potential way to, produce electricity. But the more that they think about it and the more that they sort of ponder this, the more that they understand that there are also much darker and much deeper implications for all of this stuff. And it's during this period of time, at the early part of 1939, that Niels Bohr is actually going to take a trip to the United States. This is pretty common for academics at the time. You would travel and go to these symposia or these seminars, that are put on by your friends. And there was a guy. We need to find a new way to boil water. Right. There was a guy over in the United States at this time who's actually an Italian, but he had moved to the United States to teach, and his name was Enrico Fermi. Let me show you. Here we go. This is Enrico Fermi. And Niels Bohr is going to get to the United States, and he's going to sit down with Enrico Fermi, and he's going to go, look, man, these German scientists that I know, referring to Lisa Meitner, Fritz Strassmann, Otto Hahn, and Otto Frisch. He's going to say, look, they've come up with something, and this is a big deal. Like, this is a really big deal. I think you all in the United States need to really get on top of this, because by the time 1939 had rolled around, it was really looking sketchy over in Germany. Now, this is prior to the actual invasion of Poland that kicked off World War II, but this is during the period of time where everybody had effectively run out of ways to try to appease Hitler, and they knew that it was either going to be he's going to calm down or stuff is going to go crazy. Apropos of nothing, your daughter got selected as an ugly stepsister in upcoming Cinderella play at the Children's Theater on the Coast. Well, congratulations. Yes, appeasement in our time, correct. The good old give him what he wants and he'll eventually stop asking approach, which clearly didn't work. But there was this atmosphere that people knew something was about to happen, right? It's sort of the deep breath before the plunge moment. And Fermi and Niels Bohr were talking about this stuff at this symposium, and it got out pretty quick. And Niels Bohr got up to give a speech, and by the time he had even gotten up to give his speech, people had already figured out what he was going to give the speech on, and it had sort of already snowballed because these people were talking to these people and these people were talking to these people, and to the point that Niels Bohr had to take a moment to even remind everybody that it wasn't his idea. It was something that had come from Meitner and Frisch and Strassmann and Hahn. Remember, this is not me. I'm just sort of the guy bringing it over here. And once this concept of fission really starts setting in American academia, it's going to get big, and it's going to get big fast. And it's going to spread all across the United States. There's going to be people in California talking about it. People in, especially in New York, especially at Columbia University where Fermi was working. That selection somehow feels like a backhanded compliment. Congratulations. I don't think that it is. Both of his daughters are cute as a button. A heat wave, if you will. Perhaps a shock wave, a ripple effect. Anyway, so two of the people that are going to catch on to this fission concept are two physicists. One of them you're very familiar with, Albert Einstein. Another was a Hungarian physicist living in the United States that knew Enrico Fermi, knew Niels Bohr. Cascade event, perhaps a reaction. A guy named Leo Szilard. And these two guys spent a lot of time talking and thinking about this stuff. So much so that I found this great picture of them together. So here we have Einstein, and I chose this picture on purpose because he has this wicked awesome church warden pipe that I just thought is so cool. Not that I smoke a pipe. Yeah, it's a Gandalf pipe, right. He sort of looks like Gandalf here, and I was like, I'm totally using that picture. But anyway, so here's Albert Einstein. This is Leo Szilard here. Again, he's a Hungarian physicist that was also working at Columbia University. He was very young at the time. He was sort of the junior member of the group. There's actually a video of him talking about it that I watched prior to the stream where he's sort of joking that his only job was to drive people around. That he was the one that had a car and he was the one that knew how to drive. So he was the official chauffeur of the early Manhattan Project. Anyway, what they're holding here is actually a very famous letter that's referred to as the Einstein-Szilard letter. And inside of the letter, these two physicists wrote basically a description of the potential that nuclear fission posed. And they wrote this letter and addressed it to the President of the United States at the time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And in August of 1939, they sent this to him, and the letter sort of lays out this concept. Like, look, the United States needs to look at this. The United States needs to take this seriously. Other countries are already involved. We're behind the ball on this already. The Germans are already looking into this stuff. The British are already looking into this stuff. America needs to catch up. This has a really big potential to make a really devastating weapon. And the sort of the gist of this letter is, if we don't catch up with them, we are going to be potentially at a very steep disadvantage. Would you like to experiment with me? Check yes or no. I love it. Dear Mr. President, do you want to experiment with me? Check yes or no. So the letter actually does get to Roosevelt's desk. He reads it because it has, the names of these people, especially Einstein. If Szilard had written it himself, the impact would not have been so great. Einstein signing onto this letter was a really big deal. And do an impression of FDR's response to that note slipped to him during class. Let me find a piece of paper. Okay, so I have my piece of paper here that's got my note on it. And I'm sitting here and I'm being a very good student because I'm Franklin Roosevelt. I've been to my Ivy League education. I have all of my fancy degrees. My family is super rich. My great uncle was the president already. And I hear. And then I sort of pause and I look, and then I adopt my FDR voice. By the way, if you don't know what FDR sounds like, you can listen to hours and hours and hours of his radio broadcasts. He has this very sort of deliberate cadence. Do you want to experiment with me? The bomb is a big deal. We should stockpile uranium. Please respond. Check yes or no. Well, it seems like I don't like the Germans, so we should give them money. The fireside chats, absolutely. So that's pretty much what happens. He reads the letter. He goes, is this legit? He has a lot of people that get beside it or get behind it. And so he decides we're going to put together a group. And this is sort of the... Yeah, absolutely. No problem. That's why it's there. So, just to be clear, FDR doesn't really know anything about this, right? So he's not a physicist himself. Why is it blocking put? Okay, so my auto mod is going absolutely bonkers tonight. I apologize to everybody that has been stopped by the auto mod for something that is just absolutely dumb. I don't know what's going on with that. I'm going to have to go look at it. Also, hey, Techman, good to see you, my friend. He did have a very, very calming voice and a very measured cadence that knew when to rise and when to fall. The World War II Museum in New Orleans has a great exhibit on this. Yes, it does, and I want to get back to that soon. No, you're good. So, Advisory Committee on Uranium. Let's just be clear. FDR was not a nuclear physicist. He did not really know what was going on with this. He understood the letter, and he understood the concept of it, but he did not have the facts. He didn't have an informed opinion, right? So he goes, I need to have an informed opinion. I need to put people together that are going to be able to produce an informed opinion for me. And so he reaches out to several of these scientists at Columbia University, and the leading scientists are Fermi and Szilard, the guy that signed on the letter with Einstein. And he has the government cut them a check for $6,000. And you're like, okay, what are you going to do with $6,000? Well, at the time, $6,000 was like $100,000, right? So this is a pretty sizable budget. And he goes, okay, look, what you need to do is get more information. See if you can make this happen. See what can come of it. See if you can, like the German people had mentioned this concept of a reactor, something that could be used to create electricity. See if you can get that to happen. So the Advisory Committee on Uranium goes off to Columbia University and starts working on this stuff. And they are going to buy a whole bunch of graphite, and they're going to try to get their hands on as much uranium as possible. Here's the thing about uranium, though. It's not really that common in a refined state in nature. When you find uranium in nature, it's usually in some version of a mixture with another element, or it is in an isotope that would not work for these particular reactions that they were trying to do. There was a mine in Colorado that could produce some uranium, and the government basically put that whole place on standing order. There were a couple of... there are actually only 4 mines on Earth at that time that they knew that could produce the uranium that they needed, so they sort of tried to get as much as they could, and 3 of them were on the sort of good guy side of World War II. So they start working on this stuff, and they are able to confirm the nuclear fission exercise. They are able to take a uranium-235 and shoot it with a neutron and break it up and get 2 elements of barium. So they are able to confirm fission can happen. Like, look, yes, it can happen. We've done it ourselves. But they can't ever get it to roll over and start this chain reaction. It's called going critical. They can't figure out how to make all of that happen. So that's where they stood for most of 1939, but then we all know what happened in 1939. In 1939, Germany invades Poland, which starts World War II. Germany very quickly begins to turn on France and Britain, and things in the world get pretty dark and pretty grim. Not that they had been sterling beforehand, but, things have progressed pretty rapidly. And because there had not been as much progress on this as FDR had hoped, he is going to fold the Advisory Committee on Uranium into a larger group within the military. Hey, you sci-fi Taoist. Germany broke their agreement? Gasp! Le shock! I know, right? Oh, man, I'm going to have to type this on like 4 lines. Why do these things have to have titles so long? Alright, I'm going to have to... Let me change my font size real quick. We'll drop this down a little bit. There we go. Boom. Font change. So, when America starts thinking about actually potentially going to war, we're going to take that Advisory Committee on Uranium and we're going to fold it into a military government structure. But the Brits and the French said appeasement would 100% work. I know. Germany broke their... Yes, okay, so... Damage says, I had a great uncle who was somehow involved in the Manhattan Project, though we never learned exactly what it was he did. Wasn't a major player, that's all we know. Damage, where did he live? I might actually be able to help you out with... Oh, probably not what he did specifically, but I might be able to give you a better idea of what was going on at those sites. Also, hey, Damage, good to see you. This National Defense Research Committee on Uranium was formed in 1940, and this wasn't just looking at bomb stuff. This is also the American military project that was looking at developing things like radar and sonar. Neither of those had been invented yet at the time. And the gentleman that was running this particular committee was a guy named Vannevar Bush, who is this guy. He is not related to the Bush family that would go on and be 2 presidents as the different family. Vannevar Bush was a civilian. And, sorry, wrong button. He had been part of the American war effort during World War I, and he was really, really upset with how little communication went on between the civilian research side of the American war effort and the military side. So when he sort of got brought into the... FDR was the one that selected him. Hedley Lamar? Yes, absolutely. So when FDR brought him in, one of the things that Bush said very directly to FDR was, look, we need to have a more streamlined procedure. You need to put me in charge of this stuff. I know I'm a civilian. I can't be over the military people specifically, but if we're going to get military funds, you need to have at least some sort of civilian head that can actually coordinate the research, that can get everything together, that can directly liaise with the military and the government, so that we don't have these bogged down, so that I, as a civilian research guy, don't have to go through all of these multiple levels of forms and hoops and ladders and yada, yada, yada to actually get something done. And when he did that, it actually streamlined the process quite a bit. However, things were bogging down. And one of the reasons that it had bogged down was that a new player had entered the game. Like, player 2 has entered the game. And player 2 was plutonium. Plutonium had just been discovered not too long prior to this in 1940. And when plutonium shows up, it's sort of the next one in line. Like, okay, well, if we can do this sort of fission stuff with uranium, could we then also maybe do it with plutonium? Is there a potential usage for that? So a lot of people had sort of been sectioned off and stuck over to look at plutonium, and there are some people that are still looking at uranium, especially looking at how to refine uranium and how to get it in a quantity that could be used, but they weren't really getting anywhere. And during this period of time, the British had actually been progressing on this in a much faster way. Now, to be fair, once again, the British did have a heads up, because When Lisa Meitner had come to Copenhagen, one of the things that she had done was talk with a lot of British people. And Niels Bohr had stopped over in England prior to making his way to the United States. So England had its own nuclear program. It was called the Tube Alloy Program. And they were making a lot of headway. They had already figured out quite a bit of stuff that the people in the United States had not figured out. And the British are going to figure out that the Americans are spending money on this, but they're not getting a lot of business end from that. They're not getting a lot of product. And one of the things that Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister of England at the time, really wanted to do was foster this relationship between Great Britain and the United States. Mostly because the United States was not in the war at that time, and Winston Churchill very much wanted the United States in the war on the side of the British, because the French had been defeated by this point. Germans had effectively overrun the European continent, and we were stuck in this period of time where basically the Germans were bombing the British every night. So it'd be great to have, some help here. The Tube Alloy project was a little bit ahead, and Churchill figures out that they are ahead, and he goes, look, here's what I'm going to do, FDR. I'm going to send one of our guys over to your project. And the guy that they picked was this guy named Mark Oliphant. Yes, Oliphant. He's not big as a house, but this picture of him is gray as a mouse. So Mark Oliphant was the British scientist from the Tube Alloy project that gets selected to go over to the United States and basically catch them up on things. England decided to tap that delicious plutonium. They did indeed. So Oliphant here travels over to the United States, and he brings with him some really interesting information. First and foremost, the British Tube Alloy project had figured out what is called critical mass. All right, so critical mass is and this is, again, sort of very rudimentary, but in chemistry and physics, critical mass is the amount of material that you need of a radioactive element to make it go into a sustaining chain reaction. Basically, this is how much you need to make a big bada boom, right? To get back to Leeloo Dallas multipass. And they had figured that out. So they sent Mark Oliphant over. He meets with all of these people. They fill everybody in. And FDR gets word back from the American the National Defense Research Committee on Uranium. They actually dropped on uranium, so they were just the NDR at that point, or National Defense Research Committee, NDRC. And so he gets word back that, okay, with this information that we got from the British, we could potentially make a bomb. We know the physics behind it now, we could make a bomb. Is that what you want us to do? And FDR actually sat on that for a little while, and then something happened. And we all know probably what happened. That was the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which was a day that shall live in infamy. You can go read or listen to that if you want. I'll just do FDR impressions all night long. Anyway, so America gets bombed. We get involved in the war, and Roosevelt says, yeah, If you guys think that you can actually get a bomb out of this, if you think that there is application for this to make a bomb, you go start making a bomb. And they do. But to figure that out, they're going to need something else. They're going to need more, because when the military starts actively developing a weapon, this is where stuff has to get, like, not just top secret, but, like, super duper secret. And the guy that they put in charge of this military project is from the Army. His name is James Marshall. This is not Marshall from the Marshall Plan. This is another guy. James Marshall gets brought in as the official military head of the program. He is going to be really important in doing a lot of things right off the bat. But to begin with, I need to show you what he looks like because I have these photos and I may as well use them, right? Explicitly ticking off all Americans, yes. This is forgetting. Yeah, this is the Marshall from Forgetting Sarah Marshall. This is Sarah Marshall's great-grandfather. So here is James Marshall. And there's actually an interesting concept here because at the beginning, the funding for a lot of this stuff had come out of the Navy. And Roosevelt's decision to move this program over to the Army was actually one that a lot of people at the time sort of criticized, mostly because, everybody wants to be the one that's leading the charge and everybody wants to be the one that has the new fancy project from the government. But the decision was made because the Army had a much larger budget at the time, and it was more likely that the weapon, as it were deployed, would be deployed by the Army. So, hence, given to the Army. Can't imagine what the people in the nearby towns in New Mexico thought of the bombing going off. I'm sure you thought it was aliens. Who went on to start the chain of Marshall's liquidation stores? He's good at liquidating stuff. Oh! Those are some... never mind, I'm not going to go into heavy water. There's a whole other thing that I could do there. Anyway, so James Marshall gets picked to head this up. He said, and this is when they actually sort of take on the name, the Manhattan Project, as a nickname. But there's a lot of big stuff that they have to decide. First off, there is just the very basic concept of where are we going to try to do this stuff. And Marshall decided that what he wanted to do was stay close to Columbia University because he was already going to bring in a lot of the scientists like Fermi and Szilard. They invited Einstein, but he declined. So he wanted to put it nearby, the offices of this nearby in Manhattan, where Columbia University is, which brings us to this building. This building is 270 Broadway, and this building was where the first headquarters of the Manhattan Project worked. This is where James Marshall's office was. By the way, I should note, photo here taken by our very own Vern NYC, who very lovingly spent a little bit of time last week walking around Manhattan taking cool photos for us like this that I told him I was directly going to steal. I should also note that Sci-Fi Taoist posted several photos. Because the one that I wanted to use had her face in it, I did not use it because I didn't think that I was going to be able to get in contact with her fast enough. But she also posted some cool photos that you could check out in the old Discord. Hey, you lumpy dragon potato. Good to see you. You need to put on your adventure hat. Awesome. We've got lots of cool folks. Let's do a few shout outs while we're at it. I'll start here with my friend Lumpy Dragon Potato, a great Minecraft streamer. I personally never thought that I would enjoy watching a world being created through Minecraft as a stream, but it is amazingly therapeutic. And you should go check out Lumpy Dragon Potato's stream because he's a great guy and has built this incredibly detailed world that blows my mind when I see it. So go give him a follow. We've got Steve Sketches with us tonight. Steve is... Come on now. There we go. Steve is an amazing artist. A guy that is just talented like crazy. Does lots of fantasy sketching things for commissions, so you should go check out his stream to get some handy lessons on how to learn, but also just to hang out and have a cool chat. We've got the Cave Geek. If you've ever been in the stream before, you've probably heard me give the shout out to the Cave Geek before. Good friend. He's a great guy. Does all sorts of really cool things with buckskin and pyrography tools. Plays games occasionally later on at night. Has recently been cleaning a steam trunk, which is another one of those things where I didn't think I would ever want to watch someone clean a steam trunk with a toothbrush, but, you know, there we go. We've got the Damage in the room with us. We actually rated Damage last week, so if you're hanging around with us, we brought some new friends over to Damage's stream. Damage is an fantasy illustrator as well. Does some really cool stuff. I have learned from hanging out in Damage's stream that we have very similar tastes, so if you appreciate my humor and my social commentary stuff, I think you'll find a great home over with the Damage as well. We've got David Peterson, who is near and dear friend here, amazing artist, illustrator of the comic book Mouse Guard. You should totally go check it out. Has recently been doing some commission work, coloring stuff, and doing traditional inks on stream. Stream tomorrow is going to be an arts and crafts stream, which I sort of already know what's going on, but I'm not going to spoil it because, well, I mean, I think a lot of people kind of know what's going on if they've paid attention to his social media lately. But yeah. We've also got the Visual Nomad in the room tonight. Great oil painter in the realm of whimsy and colors that are beautiful. Does abstract art, but it's not like abstract. So sometimes when people hear abstract art, what they think of is, I bet they just paint triangles, and that's a reference to Seinfeld. The abstract art that Visual Nomad does can get abstract like that, but you know what's going on in the painting, and it's more of a visual deconstructionist abstract stuff that is beautiful and captures the form and function of something in a way that is more broken down than it is just sort of on the visual level. And you have a great time in the room there, so go check out Visual Nomad as well. I don't think that I forgot anybody, but if I did forget anybody, I do seriously apologize. I love all of my friends, and I forgot Martest. 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 You should go check out Martest, who is an art streamer as well. Streams usually a little bit later on at night. I've not been able to catch a stream lately, so I don't know what the current project is, but you should totally go check out Martest's channel when he streams. He's a cool guy, very warm atmosphere, and don't let the prickliness confuse you. He likes to act a big game, but you can tell that it's like a Twinkie wrapped in a porcupine. You know, bristly exterior, but warm and cozy on the inside, right? Because I know that eventually what he will say is like, I'm not really nice, or something like that anyway. You're not forgettable. I was scrolling up and you hadn't said anything in chat for a while. But go check out Friends. Friends are great. We should all hang out and go. Oh, we could summon the adventure hat. We can summon the adventure hat. Oh my goodness, where is the adventure hat? Oh, I'm actually going to need to go go grab the adventure hat. Give me just a second, because I put the adventure hat up front because I was doing yard work earlier today. And I'm super pasty white, and I don't go outside without something covering my head. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. So give me just a second. I'll throw up the break screen. I always like showing the break screen. I never really show it, but I like showing the break screen and also like pointing out the very middle photo. A lot of people here are new and have never seen my break screen. A lot of people that are here for a while never see the break screen because I rarely use it. But the center photo of the collage that is the break screen is one of my favorite photos ever. It shows me sitting on a Roman toilet and thinking. So there we go. I'll throw up the break screen. I'll be right back. All right, I have returned with the adventure hat. For those of you that do not know, this was the original emote for the channel. This is the hat that I bring with me when I go do archaeological adventure-y kind of stuff. Because again, I'm super pasty. So Damage has summoned the adventure hat, and you now get to request. What would you like? So when we summon the adventure hat, I tell a story of something that I've done adventurously, and you get to pick. So what type of story would you like to hear, Damage? Bum, bada, bum, bum, bum. Hard work is adventurous. It can be adventurous. Goes outside, sun recreates the Ark of the Covenant scene from Raiders. Yes, pretty much anytime I go, oh, look at that sexy hat. Hey, Discreet Games, good to see you, good to see you. Yeah, so you get a story, and it can be about something that I've done, a place that I've been, some weird little thing that's happened over the course of my adventures. You can just throw out a concept, or you can just say, do whatever you want, or I've been to Germany and Italy several times, and Greece and Turkey and Jordan, and all over the United States. Where else? I feel like I'm missing somewhere. The most surprising adventure you wound up having, either it didn't go the way you expected, or it went fantastically wrong. Fantastically wrong is an interesting thing to discuss. What is something that went fantastically wrong? Well, I guess the thing that I am most drawn to by the term fantastically wrong is a meal that I had in the city of when he went to get ice cream. What was wrong with the ice cream adventure? That was a fine ice cream adventure, except for the fact that the sorority girls in front of us didn't wear their masks. I didn't actually wear the adventure hat for that one either. It was on up at night. So if we throw up our modern borders, boop ba doop doop doop. So here's the country of Jordan. I was staying in the city of Jerash, which is here in the northern part. You can see home from here. There you are. Northern part of Jordan. And we were staying at this hotel that had been touted as a luxury stay. And the people there were going to prepare us a meal, and it was going to be all of this great, it was supposed to be fancy. And was that a puppy that you hear? Yes. My wife is currently at a social function, so the puppy has actually been hanging out with me on her little bed beside me, basically right here. So we were at this meal, and they brought out a whole bunch of vegetables, which, fine, no problem. I don't have a problem with vegetables. And the guy at the hotel that I was speaking with did not know good English, and I don't know very good Arabic. So in broken language, I tried to ask him if all of the vegetables had been cooked. Because one of the things that you don't do in Jordan is eat raw vegetables. They use their own sewage in certain portions of the Jordanian world for fertilizer, and if you do not have natural gut biome that can handle that, it will wreck you. And in the process of eating this meal, I had been assured that everything was cooked. I was the only person that ate the cabbage. The cabbage was not cooked. And I got the single worst stomach issue, gastrointestinal issue that I have ever had in my life. And we still had about 4 days left of the trip. So I was driving through Jordanian countryside with what turned out to be... I had to wait till I got home to actually go to the doctor, and I had an intestinal infection. There were actually colonies of bad bacteria that had sort of taken over parts of my intestines. And yeah, so for 4 days and a 12-hour plane ride back home, I was sick as a dog. Shane was how the Jordanians got their first nuclear bomb. No, but I will say that this is the origin of my current habit. So if I go anywhere now, if I'm away from home base, if you will, I have toilet paper with me. When I go for a walk, I have toilet paper with me. When I go hang out with my friends, I have toilet paper with me. I always have toilet paper with me now because I know that at any point it could strike. So technically you smuggled Jordanian immigrants in your guts. The country was like, take this, Taco Bell. They do not sound like the worms Fry got in Futurama. Correct. Give us history lessons on the colonies, the Jordanian intestinal colonies. I know that I'm breaking Douglas Adams' rule of carrying a towel with me, but I carry TP with me everywhere I go. Because of that trip. That also kept me from going to South Korea. Because I was supposed to get home from Jordan and basically have 3 days of rest and then go to South Korea. We got in from Jordan on a Wednesday. I was supposed to fly out to South Korea on a Saturday. And I actually went to work on Thursday, and my boss sent me to the doctor. She said, don't go home. You got to go to the doctor. Because I was apparently falling out. Anyway, yeah, I lost about 32 pounds over the course of 3 weeks. I got put on the strongest antibiotics that I've ever been on in my life. So at Heroes Con, you're walking around with approximately how many sheets of toilet paper folded up? Enough for 2 trips, David. Always. Because I have one trip's worth, and I'm talking generous trips here. I'm not talking about like 12 squares. 2 generous trips. Because I have one that's in my backpack, and I guarantee you that I have one in my back pocket. The antibiotics probably did the trick and slowed down the mail of the colonies, probably so, but it wrecked everything from the top to the bottom of me. I was dead on the inside. I don't know if I ever recovered from that. Anyway, so there you go, Damage. I hope that was a fantastically catastrophic bad occurrence for you. There's the adventure hat. All right, so I remember that time you tried to buy a Power Girl commission with 2-ply. That was back during the chaos of the whatchamacallit here, the pandemic, when everything went crazy. All right, anyway, let's look at some more pictures and sort of get back on track here. All right, so James Marshall is also going to look for places. So we're talking about the Manhattan Project getting founded. It gets moved under the command of the Army, and they're looking for places to go, places to set up shop. And we just looked at 270 Broadway, which Vern tells us is now condos. I hope they run a Geiger counter over all of that. So another place that Vern photoed for us is this location, which is part of Columbia University, and it's called Pupin Hall. And this is where one of the first centrifuges got set up. This is where Fermi and several of the other nuclear physicists had labs. Really expensive condos, you might add. Well, I guess if it's on Broadway, I would suspect that it probably is. It's Pupin. Good gracious. Pupin. Not poopin. Pupin. And so that's where a lot of them sort of initially set up shop. There were already people doing stuff there. They were already some lab stuff that's, we're basically in the process. So Pupin Hall and Schermerhorn Hall. Yeah, Schermerhorn. That's a great name. I didn't show you Schermerhorn. Sorry. Schermerhorn Hall. Another photo that Vern took for us here. For the advances of natural science, speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee. That's what it says here over Schermerhorn Hall. This was another location where there were some labs that were associated with the Manhattan Project. And finally, we have this cool building, which I think is wicked neat, and the location of a joke that I did not get. This is Woolworth, the Woolworth building. According to Vern, this is the largest Gothic structure in the world. This is also where one of the subsidiary companies of the Manhattan Project was going to be housed, a place called the Kellex Corporation. Jules was almost summoned there, yeah. So one of the things that Marshall has a lot of these research labs and companies do is create effectively shell companies. And the thing that was set up in the Woolworth building was this thing called Kellex Corporation, which was going to be, it's a subsidiary of the Kellogg Corporation and was responsible for some of the procuring of resources for the larger Manhattan Project. So we have a footprint. We have a place to start, but we need to figure out what do we need? Like, what are the functional parts of what we need? And this is where they're going to bring in a guy named Robert Oppenheimer, who is this guy. Oppenheimer is going to be pretty quickly the top dude in the Manhattan Project. He voiced Skeletor, right? No, not that guy. Also, 1987, a Columbia student, Ken Hetchman, was expelled for stealing some depleted uranium from the labs under the Pupin Hall. Wow! I did not know that. But that's neat. Neat in a weird way. Like, what? Okay, I mean, I guess that you've got to put depleted uranium somewhere, but why would you keep it under a building? Anyway, all of these people are fabulously brilliant, much smarter than I could ever accomplish. But Oppenheimer was going to be the guy that is really going to sort of kickstart the American side of this. And he is one of the instrumental figures in helping the group realize that just Manhattan was not going to be enough, that they needed areas that were going to be much further away from habitation, and they needed places that were much less observable, because even during this period of time in 1942, there were already lots of spy efforts underway. Everybody was trying to figure out what everybody else was doing. He also stole some purified caffeine. Huh. What do you do with purified caffeine other than get really, really hyper? I bet that piece of uranium would have paid off his school loans. Probably so. But speaking of procuring uranium, Oppenheimer talks with Marshall and Van Everbush and explains to them, like, look, to be able to get the amount of uranium that we need, we are going to have to create a lot of uranium in a really big way, and this stuff is potentially unstable, right? We need somewhere different. And this is where Oak Ridge comes in. Oak Ridge Labs is in Tennessee. This is an aerial photo from one of the earlier parts of Oak Ridge when they were first putting it together. Let me catch up with chat. Back then, they probably chewed it off on gum for... Oh, yeah. You had a friend who snorted powdered caffeine once. You don't recommend it. I would suspect not. You think he was kidnapped by the Contras? Oh, wow. Yeah, so this is Oak Ridge as it was in the past. If you look at it now, it's much more advanced and has a lot more modern buildings and things like that. So here is Oak Ridge. Now, it's fair to say several things about Oak Ridge Labs in Tennessee. Number one, it was built on land that was already owned by a lot of people. A lot of population was replaced. A lot of people were pushed out. A lot of them, including people of color that were landowners in that area, were not fairly compensated. They sort of just decided, we need this place. We're going to move in here. Oh, the map is still on Jordan. Apologies. We're talking about Jordan and showing photos of Tennessee. Thanks, Cave. Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Boom. Here we go. So, you note it is really far out in the middle of nowhere. It's on top of a ridge. But you do see that this is a big facility. It's got all sorts of stuff going on here. All kinds of buildings and cooling pools and centrifuges. But Oak Ridge was going to be the place that they got a lot of their uranium. And they did a lot of work on radiation and especially how to enrich uranium, how to get it to the particular amount of isotope value that they needed, and also how to separate it out from other things. So if you've heard enriched uranium, for uranium to be usable in a fission reaction, it has to be of a certain purity, and it has to be a particular type of uranium isotope. So you have to do sciencey stuff to it through things like gas diffusion, through things like centrifuges, through things like magnetic centrifuges. You have to do a lot of sciencey stuff to take naturally occurring uranium and get it to the point where it is weapons grade uranium. Sorry, he got kidnapped by the Taliban. Holy moly. You'd say something about that, but several of your friends snorted hot wing sauce almost every time they went to Chili's. That's crazy. Do I know those people? If I do know those people, don't tell me who they are, because that would lower my opinion of them. You really wanted to see the MP stuff in Los Alamos, but alas, it was COVID times, indeed. Had another friend who was into snorting cocaine. Crushing Altoids into a powder and leaving a bag. Oh, that's painful. But also, we'll just stick with painful. Anyway, so Oak Ridge Labs was going to be a really important part of the Manhattan Project. It's going to be where a lot of the fissile material comes from, and the technology that is going to create the fissile material comes from. There's also Los Alamos, which I think is probably the location other than Manhattan that gets the most attention. By the way, it wasn't just these three locations. There was stuff that was done in Chicago. There was stuff that was done in California. I did snort a grape pixie stick in junior high. So here's Los Alamos, New Mexico. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Let me see if I can actually put Trinity Site. Oh, I can put Trinity Site. And we'll actually move over to the actual Trinity Site instead of the... There we go. That's the city of Los Alamos, which is not the same as Los Alamos, though. So you can see here, this is the location. And we'll talk about this in a bit. But, yeah. Go out to the middle of nowhere, blow stuff up, right? Wasn't there a main site elsewhere? The NPS had 3 sites, but forget the third. So, I mean, yeah, there was place in Chicago, Site X, the code name Site X. That was Oak Ridge Labs. Site Y was in New Mexico. Where's the Neo site? Hanford, Washington was where they had, for the plutonium, right. So they had a centrifuge there that was producing the weapons-grade plutonium. Which is initially what they're going to end up going with, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So Oppenheimer gets in with Fermi. They set up all these sites. They start looking at stuff, and they have big questions to answer. Neo, Trinity, Matrix. Oh, I gotcha. My bad. Lost that one in the shuffle. Site, why not? Okay, so we've got several big things to decide. Now that we know the critical mass of uranium, now that we know how to handle making a bomb theoretically... Oh, I didn't actually show you Los Alamos. Let me show you the... so this is an aerial picture of Los Alamos. That is a photograph from 1946. So this is actually after they had finished making the bomb. But this is sort of the layout. And you can even see that they had little houses and stuff where the people would stay. Okay, so how are we going to make this bomb work, right? And the concept here is we need to have a knowledge of how long it takes. How long does it take this reaction to go critical and explode? We need to figure out how to make the bomb actually explode. Because here's the thing about critical mass. You can't just put something together at a level of critical mass and then just leave it sitting there because it's critical mass and it's going to blow up. So you basically have to have something that is approaching critical mass and another piece that makes it go beyond critical mass, and then find some way to mush them together to make the chain reaction occur. So how do you do that? And so there's a lot of stuff about Los Alamos that we can talk about at the end, especially the whole body snatcher of Los Alamos thing, which I'll mention towards the end. There's a lot of shady stuff going on in Los Alamos. Yes, there we go. KP actually suggested a really great video that I watched that's got some really disturbing stuff, but it's some unfortunate stuff. Anyway, so the initial concept of how to make this bomb is what they're calling a gun-typed bomb. So here's a model, and I'll sort of try to walk you through this. All right. So here we go. Up here, we have some uranium, and it is in the shape of a cylinder. Hey, Bubba, welcome. Back here, we have more uranium, and it has a hollow spot in it. So follow with me now. This amount of uranium plus this amount of uranium is more than critical mass. So when this amount hits this amount, it will set off the nuclear chain reaction and cause the explosion. So what we have back here at the end is some sort of firing cap. Basically, if you know how a modern bullet cartridge works, there's the firing cap or the percussion cap. So you have something like that, which propels this hollow uranium sleeve down this gun barrel to hit this cylinder target down here to produce critical mass. Boom, you have a big weapon. Now, there are a lot of troubleshooting things that you have to go through here. First off, you have to know how long it takes for the hollow slug to hit the target at the end. You then have to know how long it takes for that amount of material to go critical. You also have to make sure that the percussive cap, the conventional explosive that you're using, doesn't shatter the uranium sleeve to the point where parts of it get left behind. It has to meet in solid mass. It can't fracture, because if you only send half of the hollow sleeve down, it's not going to reach critical mass and it's not going to set off the bomb. So they have all of these things that they're trying to figure out, and they start coming up with different concepts of how to make this work. And the first one, sorry. The first sort of process that they come up with is this thing called Thin Man. This is not Slender Man. It's Thin Man. And this is the code name of the bomb. Oops, sorry. I keep doing that. So these are Thin Man shells. And so down here on this end, you would have the hollow sleeve and the percussive cap, and this would be the gun barrel. And then down here on the other end, you would have the other part of the uranium that would make the big bada boom. But here's the problem with the Thin Man design. It's long, it's unwieldy. It was shown that wind would blow it off target a lot. And also, there weren't any planes that could hold onto it. So the bomb itself has to be a specific size, right? So you have to take into account the speed of the traveling, the distance that it has to travel, all of this stuff. So you can only make it so small and still get an accurate bomb. So their smallest version of the Thin Man would not fit on any of the planes that existed. So they're like, well, crud, what do we do? Well, luckily for them, around this time, there's going to be something signed called the Quebec Agreement. This is in the early part of 1943, and at this point, the United States had joined the war effort on the side of the British, and FDR and Churchill decided, look, why don't we just put our nuclear programs together? Why don't you take the tube alloy project from Britain, bring it over here to America, combine them with our Manhattan Project members. We can work maybe twice as good with double the number of people. So the Quebec Agreement in 1943 was the idea that we're going to put these two nuclear programs together. This is actually going to sort of kickstart the Americans' process. And they figure out pretty quick that the Thin Man has problems and it's really not going to work. They scrap the Thin Man pretty fast and they move on to a different type of projectile weapon that they codenamed Little Boy. Now, this might start sounding fairly familiar to you, but Little Boy is another gun-typed projectile, right? So it's smaller, though, and it's also using a different element. So the Thin Man project was trying to do plutonium. They were trying to work with this specific isotope of plutonium called plutonium-239, and it wasn't work. So they figured out, look, why don't we go back to uranium where we started? And so Little Boy was a gun-typed bomb using uranium, which had a lower critical mass, which means that you don't have to have as much of it. It doesn't have to travel as far. So the bomb itself would be smaller. And Little Boy started showing some progress. But they're going to bring in another potential type of weapon that is not a gun type. It's called an implosion type. And let me show you what an implosion bomb looks like. So here's the deal. In this whole mess right here, you have a few things. So here's the bomb's casing. You have an internal metal casing here. And the goal of this bomb is to implode this plutonium. Now you go, why would you implode that? Well, here's the thing. Remember, we're talking about critical mass. So the closer something gets with compression, the closer it gets to having that critical mass. So if you have stuff that is in critical mass, but it's hollowed out, it's not all touching itself, so it's not critically active. It's not going to blow up on you. So basically, if you have a hollow sphere of plutonium, even if the plutonium total mass equals critical mass, it's not in a dense enough amount or dense enough space to create the nuclear reaction. So if we're looking at this bomb here, what we're looking at is explosives, critical density, correct. Because it not only has to have critical mass, it has to have critical density. So we see here that we have explosives around this plutonium sphere, and we have added uranium elements that are going to just make this whole thing even more pewier. So when this thing explodes, what happens is that there are two detonations. The first detonation is the bomb itself crushing downwards and inwards on the plutonium core. Then, when the plutonium core hits critical density, you have a second, much more substantial nuclear detonation. So this was codenamed Fat Man. So they're working on both of these devices at roughly the same time. And they're different approaches using different methods. The reason they really wanted to work with plutonium is because even though they had less of it, it made a substantially higher yield. 2 bombs in 1. Yes, that's exactly correct. More pewier. Yes, that's the physics term, right? The thing from the Fallout games, right? So when you go to Megaton, that thing sitting outside there is a big honking nuclear bomb, right? So the issue that we have... sorry, you're talking about the Fat Man, which is the nuclear launcher in Fallout. I apologize for missing that reference initially. Yeah, so if you've ever played Fallout, you can find mini nukes, which are neat little things that look like tiny little versions of Fat Man, and you have this shoulder-mounted launcher that sort of lobs mini nuclear explosive devices at the bad guys. And it's definitely what you want to have when you're fighting Deathclaws. Raise your hand if you save scummed just to see what happened when you blew up Megaton. Absolutely. You've got to try to blow it up at least once, right? There's no shame in that. Okay, so you got to figure out what's going on here. So we're working on both of these bombs. We now have all of the British coming over. And this actually brings us sort of full circle back to Otto Frisch. If you were here with us at the beginning of the stream, Otto Frisch was the nephew of Lisa Meitner, who was involved in the first experiment that proved fission possible. So Frisch was the guy that coined the term nuclear fission. He's actually over in the United States working with the nuclear program at this point. You've surprisingly never done that, but then again, you haven't played as much of 3 as you did with New Vegas. Well, that's fair. New Vegas was a good game. Different, but good. I appreciated the mod community a lot with New Vegas more than I did in 3. There were a lot of people that poured a whole bunch of heart and soul into New Vegas mods, and I really appreciated that community. It was good stuff. So, we're working on designs. We have ideas. We have testing sites. We start trying to figure out what's going on, how we're going to do things, what it's looking like. Things in World War II are getting pretty bad. By this point, at the end of 44, Germany was sort of winding down, but the war in the Pacific was absolutely still very much raging. This is during the island hopping campaigns when you have battles like Iwo Jima, battles that are sort of carved into the psyche of American people that were in World War II. The battles in the Pacific were brutal as mess. And the military knew this stuff. They knew what was going on. They knew that Japan was an enemy that was not likely to surrender, not to be confused with auto fresh little trees. Correct. So the potential of fielding one of these weapons is growing. And after the initial theoretical physics of all of these Fat Man and Little Boy projects are worked out, then they start working on, and this is going to sound pretty horrible, but it's just the truth of the matter, they started looking on the damage that it would cause. And one of the big debates that they looked at was, do we have these bombs detonate on the surface, or do we have them detonate in the air? And a lot of the math that they did during the end of 1944 and the beginning of 1945 was calculating the potential damage that a nuclear detonation shockwave would do. And they figured out that the damage would be exponentially higher if the bomb actually detonated above ground, so that it would displace air and mass around it and create a very big shockwave that would travel further than the actual nuclear detonation itself. So they decided we're going to blow it up in midair instead of on the ground. Now, they did a lot of calculation as to exactly how far off of the ground that it needed to go to achieve maximum effect. And I know this sounds horrible, but they really were trying to figure out how we can turn these things into making the most effective killing machine that we can come up with. But that's what they were doing. So, this actually brings us to the Trinity site, which is here in New Mexico. As you can tell, it is in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, way out in nomad land. And the first thing that they do when they get out there is to try to simulate what they think the nuclear blast might do. So they take some depleted uranium and they create what is basically a firing pin out of this depleted uranium, and then they wrap 91 tons of dynamite around it. Imagine how big 91 tons of dynamite is. And then put a neat little nuclear explosion firing pin in the middle of that dynamite. And then set it off. The TNT test site explosion at Trinity was humongous. It was the largest detonation of anything that had ever happened on the face of the Earth, except for things like, impacts from space and volcanic eruptions. Close to where you were stationed in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. 91 tons of dynamite on the bomb. 91 tons of... Oh, wait, never mind. Yeah, because if you blow up 1 ton, you're going to blow up all the tons, right? So they blow it up, and then they go, okay, well, that was about what we expected, so let's blow up a nuclear bomb. And what they blow up is something that they called the Gadget. Biggest explosion until Shane's trip to Jordan. This is a photograph of the Gadget. And this was an implosion-typed bomb. Implosion, plutonium-typed bomb. And if you would use your imagination, this was basically the inner shell of what the larger bomb would house. Look at the photograph. Look at this photograph. Yep. So they rigged up the Gadget on a suspended gantry about 100 feet off of the ground, and they backed really, really far up. And on July 16th, 1945, they detonated the world's first nuclear weapon. And the explosion was not equal to 91 tons of dynamite. It was equal to 20,000 tons of dynamite. It's what's called 20 kilotons. Yeah. 20 kilotons of dynamite exploding, but one nuclear bomb did that. Anyone else here been to Wright Pat and seen the replica nukes? I have not, Foggage. Fun fact, that's what you named one of your rats in New Mexico. And because it was secret, they gave no warnings to anybody. This is correct. Nobody knew what was going on. They just knew that there was a big bada boom. 20 kilotons of TNT. And there are, by the way, first-hand accounts of what happened in the bunker, because, you know, all of the scientists were in a bunker really far away watching all of this happen. And Oppenheimer's reaction was probably the most famous. He said some people were crying, some people were laughing, but most of us were silent. And what ran through my mind was a story from the Vedas where Vishnu says, "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." So here's Robert Oppenheimer, one of the most intelligent men on the face of the earth, looking at what he and his comrades had created, and then thinking that he had basically become the god of death. And this was not done in a braggy sort of way. This was a very somber moment. And like Sci-Fi said, I could not imagine being in the middle of that. I feel like that would have been probably too much. I don't think I would have wanted to be there. There is a great part of me that wishes no one had ever invented these things. Especially since they used it, you think the guilt will never go. Yeah, and that's another thing. You know, like it was. They knew what they were gonna. They knew what they were making. They knew what it was going to be used for. And then they saw what happened. So this was in July, again, July 16th. And so 61 kilotons can power 6,817.5 homes for a year in one explosion. That's crazy. Just so people remember how horrid it was, enough that it's never used again. But, you know, enough about human history not to be very optimistic. Well, we haven't used one since, but that doesn't mean that we won't ever use one again. Anyway, so that was in July 16th. As soon as the government heard about this, you know, as FDR gets word, they did detonate the bomb. It does work. It is incredibly disruptive. It is absolutely massive. It is the thing. It is the thing that we thought it would be. Gallifrey uses nuclear fission to travel through time. Earth uses nuclear fission to boil water and blow things up. Yeah. Well, a lot of the bombs that we use today are actually fusion bombs. Hydrogen fusion is different than uranium and plutonium fission. And it's actually more powerful. But yeah, so the bombs that we have now, let me put this in perspective. The bombs that we have now, the nuclear warheads that we have now, are about half the size of Fat Man, but about 3 grades of exponential more powerful. So we have exponentially more destructive force. So like one of the nuclear warheads that we have today is like a bomb times a bomb times a bomb. And we have about 4,000 of those. And Russia has about 5,000 of those. And the rest of the world put together has about 1,400 of those. So if we set all those off at one time, we could literally destroy the face of the Earth. Which brings us to the Fermi paradox. which is why we don't see more alien species. And Enrico Fermi came up with the idea that, because eventually civilizations become so advanced, they figure out how to make nuclear bombs and then they destroy themselves. And when Enrico Fermi says that, you have to sort of stop and listen, because he made what we did. Like, he was one of the instrumental workers. He knows how much power is in one of these things. It is a sobering thought, and it gets to that realm of how our brains can't process big numbers, right? Anyway, I'm getting a little bit off track because I'm trying to impress to everybody exactly how big of a deal blowing this junk up is. Anyway, so we get the word. The government figures out what's going on. We're looking at trying to invade Japan anyway. By this point, FDR had died and Truman was president. Truman is going to give the okay to drop a nuclear bomb. And the bomb that he chooses to drop is this guy. This is an actual photo of Little Boy. The actual first nuclear bomb that was dropped on the city of Hiroshima on August the 6th, 1945. This is right before it was loaded onto the plane. But there you go. That is... Well, that's what it looked like. Kind of crazy to think about. But that little thing right there killed, tens of thousands of people. Did get to see the boxcar. Yes. So the boxcar dropped Fat Man. That's the second bomb. The plane that dropped Little Boy was the Enola Gay. No. You're good, and that's an easy thing to flip up there. So, when Little Boy detonated, that was 15,000, the equivalent of 15 kilotons of damage. Hit the city of Hiroshima on August the 6th, and word was sent to Japan, we have more of these. If you don't surrender, we're going to drop another one. Of course, Japan refused to surrender, so 3 days later, on August the 9th, we dropped this guy. This is Fat Man. And it was, of course, dropped on the city of Nagasaki. Nagasaki was not the primary target, but due to cloud cover, the primary target was abandoned and Nagasaki was selected. When Fat Man blew up, it had the equivalent of 21 kilotons. When you look at the Japanese cities on Google Earth, it doesn't even look like they were bomb hits. Yeah, so that's the thing about the Japanese economy. When the Japanese decided to rebuild, they did so with such fervor that they just sort of completely erased. Well, they didn't completely erase it. There are still places that you can go in both Hiroshima and Nagasaki that you can basically still see damage. And one of the things that they kept was some of the walls where people's outlines had been flash burned into the buildings. What was the primary target? So the primary target was a city called Kokura. And Kokura was a city that had a lot of weapons manufacturing. It was a city that had a lot of ties to the Japanese military because of both the industrial capacity to create military weapons and the fact that it was a big hub for both ships moving stuff around and trains moving stuff around. So Kokura was the primary target. They switched over and went to Nagasaki. It's crazy to think that we're allies with them now. Well, yeah, that is kind of crazy. There was a mindset to move forward and become better. The A-Dome is still in Hiroshima. Yeah, so you can go still see a lot of stuff that's around, but it's messy. It's a weird and uncomfortable time in our human history. I personally wish we would have never created it. I wish we would have never dropped them. I wish that this was something that we didn't have to live with. I grew up in the Cold War. I was taught in early grade school how to duck and cover. And that, I was a very inquisitive child. So I'm going to kindergarten and first grade and second grade and third grade and, okay, so what was 91? How old would I? Cold War ended in 91, so I was probably in third grade. When we stopped doing the duck and cover drills. But I remember distinctly asking my mom, like, what's the flash thing? Like, it says if we see a flash, we're supposed to duck and cover. What is the flash? And then my mom trying to explain to second grade me what a nuclear bomb was and how dangerous it was. And I just remember even at that young being kind of blown away. Like, why would somebody do that to anybody else? It's just crazy stuff. Fascinating science, but horrible invention. Yeah, it's one of the weirder chapters of human history. I mean, it's happened and we can't make it unhappen. Now we just have to make sure that it doesn't rehappen, I guess, right? All right, ladies and gents. So that is the story of the Manhattan Project, and that is the through line from the first discovery of nuclear fission to the dropping of the second nuclear weapon on August the 9th, 1945. I know that I skipped over stuff. I know that I did not talk about all of the people that I could have talked about. I know that I didn't go into all of the locations that were involved. But what I did try to do was get all of this stuff in a way that we could cover in a way. Moose, I will be 100% honest and say I have not looked at the news at all today. I do not know if there is good news. If you are interested in just spinning the points, though, I could talk about what I know that's going on in the news, but I have not looked at the news at all today. I do want to remind everybody, though, you did help me remember where your great uncle was involved. So he was in Hanford. Yes, so Hanford, Washington was where the majority of the plutonium was created for the Manhattan Project. And the plutonium reactors and the centrifuges that they used to create the plutonium at weapons grade level and enrichment came out of Hanford. So if he worked in Hanford, he was potentially involved in that. And that work. Thanks for doing this one. History always. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's why I do. He was a chemist and a geologist. So I suspect that he had a lot to do with actually working with what plutonium did and was and how to effectively refine it from its natural states into usable ways. And again, that was one of the biggest hurdles that the Manhattan Project had to overcome initially, was trying to figure out how to do this enriching process. You know, you find it in the wild. It's not at the purity level or the isotope level that we need it to be. How do we get it to go from here, as it's naturally occurring in geology and chemistry, and get it to over here, how we can use it as an explosive with our physics stuff? So him being a geologist and a chemist fits directly into that larger picture of how they were trying to manipulate naturally occurring elements and turning them into weapons grade elements. He probably worked in the cafeteria, probably not as a geologist and a chemist. You think that they're important to remember Absolutely. Absolutely. Even if the Hanford site is not active in the state that you live, we do have the Everett Naval Base and the nuclear vessels. Nuclear vessels. Oh, and Moose has shared puppy videos with us. And the puppies are just like not even playing with the ball at all. Oh, poor Mama. Mama brought them a ball, and they're just too much little chunks to do anything with it. They should have a museum at Hanford. I don't know why they don't. I really don't know why they don't. Okay, so a few things to remind everybody. Reminder number one, we are currently running some community goals. So if you have stream points or adventure points that you would like to contribute, you can click on the little adventure hat icon below your chat, and you can donate to either you can actually donate to both of them if you want to. But there are two options. There is a History of Middle-earth stream. So if you want to expedite having another History of Middle-earth stream, you can do that. We're a little bit less than halfway of getting there normally. So I'm at 540 followers at the moment. When we get to 600, we'll have another one of those. Also, if you would like to contribute, there is a community goal for We Didn't Start the Fire, where I have decided that because people have asked, I'm going to go through the song We Didn't Start the Fire and give a little brief explanation as to what all of those lyrics mean, historically speaking. So you can contribute to those if you so desire. Also, would like to remind everybody that next Thursday we'll be having our regularly scheduled Adventures in History stream. We'll be talking about Stone Age Japan and the Jomon and Yayoi cultures. I'm actually really excited to talk about Japan in historical context. We've done Japan quite a bit through our viewer request streams, and I don't have a problem with that. You all can request Japan as much as you want to. You can request whatever you want as much as you want to. That's what viewer request is for. This brings us to number 3. Is that next Thursday or this Thursday? That is day after tomorrow. Day after tomorrow. Which brings us to point number 3, which is me asking. There are community goals that exist where, if you so desire, you can purchase a stream. So if you have 10,000 points as a first-time requester, or 20,000 points if you have requested prior, you can name your own viewer request stream. And at this point, I will ask if anybody has that many points and has an idea that you want to talk about. Does anybody have a request that you want to make? History of Rats? I don't know what I would do with that. I know that there were some people that were considering them. The plague could be an interesting topic, and if we did the plague, I would likely do a co-stream with my wife, or try to convince her to do a co-stream with me, because my wife has a lot more scientific knowledge. Don't look at me with that tone of voice. Direct complaints to Ford. We've done war, why not pestilence? Yes, so if you have 10,000 points, you can request it if it's the first time that you've done a request. If you've made a request before, it's 20,000 points. And if you want to do that, sci-fi, hit all the horsemen. And if nobody has the points, that's cool. This will bring us to point number 4, which is, if nobody wants to spend the points to name their own adventure or choose their own adventure, we will have a poll. Yeah, it's not there. I have to. I have turned them off, and if somebody wants to, I'll turn them on. You spent all of your points on the adventure hat. Well, I hope that you got everything that you want out of that adventure hat story. You did. It was worth it. Awesome. Okay, so I'm not seeing anybody jumping on the spending the points. So you have been using your points on the community goal and the puppy of war. Okay. If anybody wants it, you'll turn the... Oh, Moose. Well played, sir. Well played. All right. We're 25%. Wow. I just turned that on last week. All right, ladies and gents. So if we're not going to have name your own adventure, that's fine. So what I'm going to ask you all now, and I will take the first 3 that are legitimate and show up in the chat. What would you like to cover? Name your own concept, and we will put it in a poll, and then we will all vote on it. So, what you want to talk about? Have I had a stream about Rasputin? I have not, but I will put it in the list. And the plague. We didn't start the fire. So Cave is now just going to spend 10k on Rasputin. Mesoamerican First Contact. Okay, so we would need to. So Cave, do you want me to let you buy Rasputin? Because I'll turn it on right now if you want me to. Okie dokie. Give me just a second. Cave, have you suggested a stream before? I know that you've been talking about picking one before. I don't think you have. All right, Cave. Select your adventure. It should be in the list now. You should be able to see it. Rasputin. All right. So there we go. Our next viewer request stream will be on Rasputin. It's going to be an interesting one. I like the weird Russian history stuff like that. So that's going to be a fun thing to mess with. You was hoping you would reference... Aw. Yep. Okay, Shane, got this one covered for you. You don't even have to prepare. It's already done. I did not get it initially. I apologize. Matroska dolls? Yeah, lots of that stuff. All right, so that being settled, let us try to locate somewhere to raid. Somebody to raid. Somebody. All right. Let's see first who's on. Okay. So here's somewhere that we have never been before. And I've been wanting to both go check out the stream and hang out in the stream. So we're gonna go raid the stream. Give me just a second. I'll set this up. New folks hype. Yeah, I'm trying to venture out a little bit, and I want to venture out to some streams that are larger than us, and I would also like to venture out to some streams that are smaller than us, because I mean there were people that rated me that brought a lot of eyeballs to my stuff, so I you know, I want to share the wealth, right? So expand the adventure, indeed. So we're going to go raid 1 Foot in the Grave Props, who is a prop maker and is a friend and acquaintance of Cave and makes some pretty cool stuff. And I've lurked in the stream before, but I've never actually had the opportunity to do the raid, so we're going to go raid. And here we go. Okay, so our battle cry is adventure. And if you want to put that in all caps or just use lots of exclamation marks, you are welcome to do so. Also, if you have those lovely adventure hats, you can throw those into the chat as well. Please be the cool people that you are in my stream over in 1 Foot's stream. He's a pretty cool guy. I've been able to catch one stream previously. Makes a lot of neat little stuff. Has a lot of attention to detail that I think that I completely appreciate. Didn't you say that they were a friend of yours? 1 Foot in the Grave Props? I'm pretty sure that's how I got to know who they were to begin with. Somebody directed me to their location. You've never heard of them, so I don't actually know who suggested for me to go to this location. Okay, well, somebody that I know told me to go here. I went there. It was okay, so we're going to go back. Please be polite. You all have a great one. I'll see everybody on Thursday.